So here's the solution to quiz 1. Class average was 65. Actually, I think after you see the solutions, you'll see this quiz really wasn't that bad. Now, the first question is about positioning, and what I was shooting for with this question is, do you understand what positioning means? And if you look at the slides, the definition is a position you take in the customer's mind. So the answer is C, taking a position in the mind of the customer. Some of these questions are straightforward. Now, anytime you have a multiple choice test, you should also think about on the harder questions. If you can't get the answer right away, play the exam. What is the difference between marketing and sales? This goes back to the first lecture. And so marketing and sales, it's about influencing. You're trying to control the options they think about. But sales is about short-term profit, while marketing is about building relationships. And the thing is, marketing and sales are both about eventually making a profit. It just depends on the time scale. Which of the following is not a value proposition? Now, the thing we know about value proposition is it's economic, it's psychological, or it's utility. It has usefulness. So price is economic. User friendliness is about utility. People think more highly of me by owning the product. That's esteem. That's psychological. So that leaves us with D, social media promotion. Social media promotion is not a value. Social media promotion is a technique. What can I use a value chain for? This goes, I consider this to be a second tier question. And what it comes down to is when you think about what a value chain is for, how do you use it? And it's actually in the lecture that you can use it to analyze your own company, analyze your competition, learn more about my customer, because on my customer's value chain, I could see what it is they're going through. And so the lecture talked about finding gaps and things like that. So the answer is all of the above. All of it are what things you can use the value chain for. How would you describe the way people make decisions? This again comes directly from the lecture, and that's that it talks about the reason why behavioral rationality works. We talked about 3 types of thinking, and that's that people can be rational bias, they could be behavior rationality, which means there are inconsistencies in the way people think, or we could be mostly psychological or emotional. And so we know that people aren't always consistent. We know they aren't perfectly random either, because if they were perfectly random, then marketing would never work. And we know we're not mostly driven by emotion, because there's some people who are more rational than others. So what it comes down to is the one thing that is true about people is that we tend to be systematic, and that comes directly from the lecture. Another question directly from the lecture is, in adopting a product, what is the first step? And that's get them to try it, build awareness, express intent, or go for the sale. And so the first step in the funnel is to get awareness, to let them know that my product actually exists. And so the answer is B. Now, one thing you'll notice is that that these questions are not the same order you've got them in. And the reason why is I randomize it. I randomize it because it cuts down on cheating. So you can't write down all your answers, A, C, D, whatever. And you give those answers to someone else. Although one thing I'm really, really tempted to do someday is have a quiz where all the answers are B. But unfortunately, I'm not that mean or nasty. Or fortunately. Now the next one is simply, what is the definition of a chasm? And so if you're looking at revenue over time, where the x-axis is time and the y-axis is revenue, which of the following indicates that the chasm's taking place? What we know is that the chasms take place when we get off to a hot start and then it dies. And there are pictures in the lectures of how different industries die off and things like that. So this is strictly a definition question. I see early growth and the slope goes flat or significantly decreases. When it comes to buying products just in time, is one of the most conservative people I know. He doesn't like change and buys the same things. Sometimes he regrets his purchases. He follows the buying pattern of, and this is again directly off the slides. The key thing is there's a lot of slides you have to look through to look some of this stuff up, and so hopefully you've written some kind of notes or something like that to indicate, what sections are which, and so if you do need to look it up, you can look it up quickly. But this has to do with people who are basically driven by emotion. And so this fits the inertial pattern, that you know what you want to buy, you act on it, and then it even says in the problem, sometimes he regrets his purchases. So after actually making the purchase, then you see what you feel. So the answer is no, do feel. Which of the following factors least describes modern marketing today? This is also off one of the slides. I didn't talk through it, but you're responsible for reading through it. And so and this is where I talked about how traditional marketing is about putting a product out there and just seeing how many people are going to buy it, and then that's defined as a market. Whereas today we can target specific people, and since I know you better, I try to get as much money as I possibly can. So if I have 1 million customers and they're all buying $1 a piece, then I can target you and bring you all back together because of technology. Then I'm going to try to get $1.50 out of you, so I get 50% more credit. So what it comes down to is the answer is A. Which of the following technologies will most likely have the biggest impact on marketing? And so this goes into, and I consider this to be a third tier question. Well, maybe more like second tier question. But when I showed technology, did you understand the concept of what technology was doing? And that's that when technology changes communication, we change. And so that's where you saw that first there was printing that greatly changed the world. Then we got radio, then we got TV, and then we got internet. And then we got mobile. And so the thing is, desalinization, is that going to change marketing? Not really. Virtual reality? Yeah, it's a new form of communication, isn't it? Solar power? Nope. And B and C, well, if I know C is wrong, then I know it can't be B and C. So the answer is B, virtual reality. I am looking at a new product by analyzing a value chain. Which is the least productive activity if I want to get sales? And so when I'm talking about sales, it's about getting revenue. And so looking for points where you can significantly reduce costs. No, that's about profit, not necessarily about sales. Critical paths take the longest time to complete in a process. Look for points, etc., etc. So what does that answer have to do with? It has to do with more execution. Look for points where you can significantly draw attention for the shareholders. No, not really, because shareholders aren't customers. The thing about the first two is significantly reducing cost means maybe I can bring my price down, and so that could attract a customer. Critical paths, maybe I can get my product out more quickly to customers. And D is look for points where you can have features that will make the product significantly more attractive to customers. Okay, that's the no-brainer answer. Adding new features, yeah. So now I'm down to A, B, and C. And so what it comes down to is, and I consider this to be a hard question, C, look for points where you can significantly draw attention for the shareholders. Because what you do for the shareholders is irrelevant. You're trying to get sales, and by definition, sales means is that you're selling it externally. I invented a new tool for grocery stores called Einstein Cart. There's actually a graduate student who's working on this, a very smart guy. I don't know if he won the award for TEM or not. But anyway, the cart acts like a checkout stand. All your purchases in the cart are recorded, and you can pay at the cart. Which of the following is the weakest value for this product? Oh, and before somebody critiques me, I shouldn't say criticize. Yeah, Amazon has something very similar to this right now, and they're actually implementing it. It helps me. So what is the weakest value? So right away, when I talk about values, I'm thinking about emotion, economics, or utility. It helps me get more revenue by eliminating the need to pay for cashiers. Possibly, it's a correct statement. It's good for customers. No more waiting in checkout lines. Definitely, strong answer. Grocery stores are a good target market because you can sell them a lot of carts. The carts are smaller than standard carts. Well, in terms of value for this product, what is the value for it doesn't necessarily say customer. It could also mean for the business. And so, yeah, this is a hard question. And so what you need to do at this point is, what can you throw out? Well, you can throw out B, because right away you know that helping customers in checkout lines is good. So then you have A, C, and D. And so what's clear cut about A is gets me more revenue. So that's good for companies. C, sell them a lot of carts, big market. But D, are smaller carts really of value for customers? And the answer is, I don't know. It might be good. It may not be good. And so what it comes down to is D is the weakest answer. Yeah, that was a tough one. There are shades of it. But you have to look at what the question's telling you and what the question's not telling you. And so you look at A, C, and D. And A and B are clearly good. A and C are clearly good values, but D isn't. Which of the following is the weakest value for a customer owning an electric car? The lack of availability means owning one makes me stand out. Maybe. The greater acceleration gives me where I want to go in less time. Again, the first answer, what does that have to do with esteem, which is psychological? The second answer has to do with utility. I can go fast. The fuel savings is significant. Economic. The batteries have created many jobs in Utah. Well, to some people that might matter, some people may not matter, but what it comes down to is it's not a value, and so the answer is D. Dr. Cho has opened Dr. Cho's Korean barbecue chicken sandwiches cart. I actually made Korean barbecue for 110 students, well, 110 people. Some faculty attended to for Startup Village open house. I'm also the advisor to Startup Village. I made 230 pieces of chicken, and all of them gotten eaten. That was a lot of work. But anyway, I started joking. I should start sandwich carts. Anyway, they're situated outside of well-populated office buildings. At first, the carts sold out like crazy, then sales went flat. What are we seeing? And so this is actually a lot like the other question. Actually, you could put the two together and have them answer them all. But right away, we know it's the chasm. It's not the top of the sales funnel because we've already gotten sales. People are aware of it. We're in well-populated areas. It's not about behavioral economics. I should take that back. It might be. You don't know why people are buying or not buying it. And are there landscape issues? Possibly. So, but definitively that describes the chasm. What are factors that drive customer adoption? Okay, so the thing we know about customer adoption is that it's driven by the 5 C's. And so the context we're entering has an impact. The value proposition for our product has an impact. And network effects. And here's where you can play the exam. If B and C are true, then you know that D has to be a correct answer too. You don't need to know what D is. If any 2 out of the 3 are correct, then that means I have more than one correct answer, so the answer has to be A. And that's what I mean about playing the exam. Then you would say, geez, Dr. Cho, are your tests about tricks? And it's like, no, it's not about tricks. However, anytime you have a multiple choice exam, it's a game. And so this is about decision theory. For those of you who are interested or upperclassmen, this fall, Dr. Cho is actually teaching a class called Data-Driven Decision Making. It's a TEM 494 special topics, and there are a lot of TEM 494 classes, so you have to find it. But basically what I'm going to teach people is how to do decision making, how to make decisions when you don't have a lot of information and everything else. I'm so excited. Why? I think we're going to play poker. The thing about poker is it's actually one of the best things I did as an undergraduate at MIT. And the reason why is you get into the mindset of doing data-driven decision making. Every card that comes out, you're making a calculation based on what is I'm going to bet, how are people going to bet, how much is it going to cost me, how much money's in the pot, what's optimal. Global warming is agreed on by over 90% of the scientific community, yet there is no urgency in attacking the problem. One suggestion has been made that the problem is not properly framed. Which of the following is the strongest tactic to get the attention of industrial communities? I used to have much harder framing questions. I decided to go for this one. So, this goes back into the lecture, How Do People Think? And what do we know? What drives people? And the one thing that we know is framing is about, do you frame things in terms of gain or do you frame things in terms of loss? That makes a huge, because we know that pain is 3 times more than gain. So give companies tax breaks if they reduce their carbon footprint. That's about gain. Put a heavy tax on carbon use. That's about pain. Give a rebate to companies for every hour their employees contribute to green causes. That's about gain too. The problem is education. Hold internet-wide chats, TV specials on all networks, and educate the people on what global warming really is. So that's neither pain nor gain. One could argue it's gain because it's gain in education, but that's more about crossing the chasm. So we know that pain is the toughest thing. So the answer is B. I consider this to be a hard problem. Why? Because you have to understand the ideas, the concepts behind something. And the reason why I make you do this is because when you go out into the industrial world, the answers aren't going to be clean. And guess what? The people who can recognize these issues are the ones who are going to go out and win. You have a new product that you wish to sell. Which group is most likely to have the highest P and Q? So again, I need to understand the concepts. The concept of a P is what's the probability somebody will try my product. And Q is, given that somebody's using it, what are the odds that somebody else will use it too? And so I need people who are going to follow what other people do. That gives me a high Q. And P is, who are the kind of people who are going to want to try things. Due to the release of many deities, India would make a good market. Possibly, because these people are open-minded. They like to think about a lot of different things. So maybe. So I won't eliminate it. A soccer league for kids under 12. Well, you know, how much buying power do kids under 12 have? You know, it depends on mommy and daddy. I knew I used to, dig into the sofa to get nickels and dimes so I could go buy comic books. Anyway, an active social media group full of people in their 20s. That's a good candidate because, first of all, active social media group, what does that tell you? High Q, right? They're willing to be part of networks. High P, people in their 20s. Younger people tend to try things more, and that's what I talked about in the lecture. I gave an example of teenagers. The teenagers this is why they focus on the younger audiences, and especially teenagers, because teenagers have extraordinarily high P and Q. ARP is one of the most active groups in America with 37 million members. Well, yeah, I can have 37 million members. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to buy something, but they do farm buyer power, and so the answer is C. What factors explain why bounded rationality takes place? And this goes back to the lecture, and there's a slide that talks about the reasoning behind irrationality. And it talks about the reason why we may not make the best informed decision. And part of it is time, that we have a limited amount of time. Another part is how much information do we have at the time we do make a decision. And so that's why I talked about like candy bars. But anyway, so we have limited cognitive capacity. That could be it. We want to get the most we can for our money. That's rationality. So we know that's wrong. We're purely emotional beings. We know that's wrong too. So therefore that means D's got to be wrong, and that leaves us with A. If you see every question, the first thing to figure out is what is the basic idea behind it? And that points me in the topic. And then I have to think about, okay, well, what was the big concept? What was the big idea behind it? And that points you to the right answer. Companies often give rewards to customers to induce them to take action. They do this to combat, okay, so I have the status quo, and I'm giving them rewards to make them take action. Actually, I just said the answer. But why? But the key words there are to induce them to take action, which means that they're just kind of sitting still. And if they're sitting still, well, you don't give them rewards to invite viral effects. You don't want to fight viral effects. You want viral effects, unless it's bad news. Status quo, as we know, that's an answer. Cheapskate customers, possibly. And customers leaving reviews for their products, possibly. But what it's saying is to induce them to take action. Status quo, customers leaving a review for their products, people who aren't doing it, are basically a subset of status quo. And cheapskate customers are also a specific case of status quo. So the answer is B, status quo. And finally, I am walking. Does not want to pay $399.99 for a Beats headset. In terms of electronic products, he can buy a computer for that price. This is an example of, and so right away, he's comparing that price point with something that exists. And so what it comes down to is how much did you understand the section about reference points? And so we know that's the effect of reference pricing. That when we see, if we compare it to a value of something else, we know it's not about cognitive capacity because he's got all the information he wants to make a decision. It's not about hedonism. It's not about framing because nothing's being framed. It's just about the cost of the product. So what it comes down to is if you understand the idea, then this wasn't that tough a problem. If you don't really understand what reference pricing is about. But if you notice, I don't directly say, the reference he's looking at or something like that. And this is a test of how well you can recall information. Do you understand the ideas? And why? Because this is, again, situations where you make decisions. And that's what these quizzes are mostly all about.